Welcome, everyone. So just some announcements first about our upcoming satellite meeting. As many of you know, it's going to be held in Chicago just after the SIRS conference there. And I'm excited to say we have a draft program ready. We're still doing a couple of updates, but the day is starting with registration, breakfast, some welcome remarks from Vijay Mittal, who's our host for this satellite meeting. We have three presentations from local researchers from the host institution, followed by what I think is really exciting. We have a lived experience panel this time. We have three individuals joining us. And actually, if you could follow this QR code in advance before the satellite meeting, we would very much like our attendees and actually our discourse community to submit questions to our lived experience panel to serve as a source of the discussion. So if there's like burning questions that you've wondered about with your research, like, hey, I'm working on this kind of a tool, like, does this make sense to you? Or, what is it about your experience that's like been the most that you've wanted most addressed, like clinically, questions like that. It would be great to be able to put those to our panel. We've selected now 20 posters to present, and which will happen just before lunchtime. Um, and then in the afternoon, we're going to start with a working groups panel where each of the working groups will give a brief update on where we've come as a group and what we've been working on, followed by a group discussion. And then in the afternoon, we'll also have two oral sessions with brief 15-minute talks. So two before the break, a short coffee break, and then three talks later on in the afternoon, followed by the close of the meeting. Lena and I did try very hard to get funders, so program officers and people representing funding agencies to attend. We had initially planned a funding panel in the afternoon as well. But I think because of the funding situation in the US and everything being up in the air, we were unable to pull that off this year. But maybe next year. So let's see. I think that's about it. The recent Discourse newsletter for March has the registration link if anybody still hasn't done that. Actually, I believe today is the registration deadline. So if anybody was really waiting to the last minute to sign up, today is the last minute. And yeah, we look forward to seeing many of you there. And actually, this is going to be our last discourse seminar of this like kind of academic year. We'll take a break the rest of the spring and over the summer, and then start up again in the fall. And if people have, if anybody would like to participate as a part of the program committee, if anybody would like to co-host or host some of the seminars, or if you have speaker suggestions, yeah, please let us know. It would be great. Um, and actually, I think this year, this is our special highlight of our our early career investigators in the discourse community. And I think that's probably something we'd like to keep going, having one or more seminars that focus on early career investigators and the work that they're doing. So if any of you have work that you would like to present to the group, please let me know so that we can incorporate it. All right. I think that's it from me.
Yeah, just to add to that, Sunny, I reiterate this point on joining the program committee, folks. If anyone is interested, it's been really like an active, pleasurable group to work with, selecting people to do the webinar series. And this year it'll be even easier because the awards that we're giving out for EZRs, one of the understanding, one of the agreements is there will be people available for talks who are getting awards this year in the symposia. So yeah, you won't be going around trying to pick people and spend a lot of time on trying to find who's going to speak. It'll be easier this year, but it's very nice committee to be in. If you're interested, please reach out to Sunny. Also, to remind you, today is the last date for registration. You can also attend this program on Zoom. We are trying our best to make the hybrid thing work. So put your name even if you're not in person. But today is the last date. We'll be taking the registration form off after tonight. Thank you.
Yeah. So Chiche, do you want to get started introducing our speakers?
Yes, I think we can start right now. Hello, everybody. Welcome to last Discourse seminar of spring season. Today we'll have a presentation from Dr. Valeria Lucarini and Sylvia Ciampelli. Dr. Valeria Lucarini's topic is turn-taking, prosodic, and voice quality cues in relationship with psychopathology in individuals with schizophrenia, a combined acoustic and phenomenological analysis. Sylvia Ciampelli's topic is quantifying positive formal thought disorder. But first, please let me introduce Valeria and Sylvia as a first step. Uh, Valeria is a psychiatrist and at the Center for Early Intervention at San An Hospital of the in Paris, and a researcher at the Institute of Psychiatry and Neuroscience of Paris. Her research focuses on acoustic, conversational, and psychopathological aspects in neurodevelopmental disorders and the schizophrenia spectrum with an interdisciplinary and transdiagnostic approach. She will present the result of a semi-automated empirical analysis carried out with an Italian participants with and without schizophrenia, aim at investigating prosodic voice quality and interactional aspect of conversational turn-taking and their psychopathological correlates, including subjective experiences. Sylvia received her research master in brain and cognitive sciences from the University of Amsterdam in 2022. She is currently in the third year of her PhD in the group of Professor Iris Sommer at the University of Groningen. In her research, she investigated how different components of language are affected in psychiatric disorders, with a focus on the schizophrenia spectrum. Her work has both a practical aim, using language as a metric for symptoms in psychiatry, and a theoretical one, exploring the cognitive and neurobiological foundations of language by studying its impairment in psychiatric disorder. Let's have a start with Valeria, I think.
Okay, great. Thank you a lot for the presentation. So I'm gonna share my screen. Great. Okay, can you see it? Can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes, looks good.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes, Valeria.
So if it's okay for you, I can start with the presentation. So thank you for the opportunity of being here. It's a great honor and pleasure for me. Today I'm going to present a part of the PhD project that I have discussed in December 2024, and I have done under the supervision of Professor Mario Dil Krebs, who is a psychiatrist in Paris, and the co-supervision of Professor Martin Greis, who is a phonetician at the University of Cologne in Germany. So this is an outline of the talk. So I will give some very short background information about schizophrenia, and in particular about the examination of subjective experiences. And then I will talk about communication and psychosis with a focus on acoustics and turn-taking. Then I will present some of the empirical work that I have done for my thesis, and I will end with some conclusions and perspectives. So regarding schizophrenia, we know that it's a severe psychotic disorder with a prevalence worldwide of about 1%. And we also know that it has a very heterogeneous clinical presentation with main psychopathological dimensions involved, like positive symptoms, like delusions and hallucinations, negative symptoms, disorganization. But there are also other symptoms, like linguistic atypicalities that we all know and we all study here in the consortium, and also peculiar subjective experiences. And I will spend a few words about them. This is the ipsaity disturbance model. That is a theoretical model that has been developed by psychiatrist that is called Joseph Parnas about 20 years ago. But it is also based on the tradition of phenomenological psychopathology that was born at the beginning of the 20th century, especially in Germany. And following this model in schizophrenia, there would be the main perturbation of what is called the minimal self or ipseity, that can roughly be defined as the presentation in first person of the experience. And it would really be the core part of the self, while a narrative self that is more related to identity cues would be more superficial. And this perturbation of this minimal self reverberates in a set of epiphenomena that we can find in schizophrenia and also in all the prodromal phases. So these atypicalities in the way of experiences, for example, thought or the experience of the others, are considered really as trait characteristics of schizophrenia and really at the core of schizophrenia psychopathology. For example, a patient can say, sometimes it's strange, I find that while I am reading, I think someone else is doing it for me. Or I see my thoughts written on the pages of a book, and if I read those pages, they correspond exactly to my thoughts. Or my thoughts are all at the back of my forehead. Sometimes I feel them expand inside my head, almost at the point of coming out. So this was the first model we were interested in and we wanted to implement in the evaluation of our patients. Regarding the linguistic atypicalities we wanted to focus on in my PhD project, we wanted to focus on vocal markers in schizophrenia because acoustic analyses allow for a quantitative and precise evaluation of language and doesn't require transcription. So make it simple to make some linguistic analysis. A recent meta-analysis by Alberto Parola identified a plausible speech profile in schizophrenia characterized by a reduced pitch variability, a reduced speech rate, a reduced spoken time, and an increased tendency to pausing as compared to healthy controls. But the same meta-analysis also highlighted the caveats of the existing literature on the topic, in particular highlighting the need for more studies investigating relationship with psychopathology. More studying try to assess the specificity of the patterns that we investigate for schizophrenia, and more studies investigating the cross-linguistic generalizability of these cues. Especially, we have scarce evidence from Italian and French, and no studies so far assess the relationship with subjective experiences. I was also interested in studying turn-taking and in particular conversational features of language, because when we communicate, we always communicate, at least almost always, with at least one person. And the management of turn-taking is something that is highly cognitively demanding, because at the same time we need to think about what we are saying, predict the end of our conversational speaking turn, predict the end of the other person conversational speaking turn. And it has been shown that across languages, the average gap, that is the time between the end of a speaking turn of a speaker and the start of the speaking turn of the other conversational partner, is about 200 milliseconds. And the main objective of turn-taking is try to avoid long gaps, but also to avoid overlaps, long overlaps between the two speaking interactants. So this is interesting to study in schizophrenia because we know that people with schizophrenia display difficulties in different cognitive domains. But it is also interesting to study turn-taking in schizophrenia because turn-taking is also a very basic level of communication, of conversation, and there is empirical evidence of some kind of organization into alternating turns in the communication of some birds like nightingales, of some dolphins, of meerkats, and there is also empirical evidence of an organization in alternating turns in the communication between newborns and their caregivers. And why it's interesting to study it is schizophrenia, because an appropriate turn taking, an efficient turn taking, requires a certain level of interactional coordination between the two interactants. And it has been shown that in schizophrenia, there is a reduced interactional coordination with interlocutor that has been empirically tested traditionally from the motor point of view. So we found it interesting to try to study it also from the dialogical point of view, studying turn taking, that is the most basic level of organization of the conversations. So against this backdrop, we had some objectives in my thesis. Among them, we wanted to quantify turn-taking and prosodic cues in Italian-speaking people with and without schizophrenia. And then we also wanted to quantify turn-taking and prosodic cues in French-speaking people in a transdiagnostic sample, so people with the first episode of psychosis, with schizophrenia, at ultra risk of psychosis, and of ASD. Today, I'm going to present in particular the results from the first part, so from the Italian sample. So this is the first study that we published last year in Psychiatry Research, where we empirically investigated turn taking in this sample. So we recruited from the University Hospital of Parma, where I did my specialty training in psychiatry, 60 individuals, so 13 neurotypical controls and 30 individuals with schizophrenia. And the two groups did not differ in terms of age and of assigned sex, but they differed in terms of educational years and also in terms of employment status. So regarding the psychopathological evaluations that we performed, we used the PANSS scale to evaluate the positive, negative, and disorganization symptoms. We evaluated language with the TLC and the Klang scale, so the thought, language, and communication scale, and the clinical language disorder rating scale, so the Italian versions of the tools. And then we investigated subjective experiences with two phenomenological scales that are able really to quantify these peculiar atypicalities in subjective experiences. And those scales are the E's and the R's scales. And then maybe for the sake of time, I will not describe the scales now, but if you have questions about it, we can come back to this later. So regarding the recordings, this is a graphical representation of our experimental setup that we designed together with the linguists of the University of Cologne. So each participant underwent an interview with a psychiatrist or a trainee in psychiatry, and we performed double-channel audio recordings with headset microphones connected to a portable recorder. And this, so our objective was to try to obtain good quality audio recordings that then we analyzed with the Pratt software. And the conversation were mainly semi-spontaneous conversations with some fixed questions about interests, hobbies of the participants, but then the conversation went on also following what the participants wanted to talk, to discuss. Regarding the turn-taking features extraction, we developed our own set of scripts with Pratt and R. So we developed a pipeline combining Pratt and R scripts, and we published some papers with also some links to open repositories if you want to try this pipeline, that then we applied to the WAVE files that we obtained with the recordings. And then we graphically obtained this representation of the turn-taking that we called COSAR, Content-Free Speech Activity Records, where basically each participant is color-coded and each line represents a speaking turn, while each blank space a silent turn or a moment of silence. And then we quantified, for example, the duration of the speaking turns, the duration of the silent turns, of the overlaps, of the mutual silence, and other cues that we detailed in the paper that we published. So then we compare the two groups. So here the schizophrenia group is colored in fuchsia and the control group in orange. And as you can see, regarding some of the cues that we extracted, basically almost all the turn-taking cues differed between the two groups. So in conversations involving individuals with schizophrenia, the interviewer needed to talk more while the participant talked less. There was an increased level of overlap between the two interactants in conversations with people with schizophrenia, and also an increased level of mutual silence between the two. And exploratory, we also regarded within the group of people with schizophrenia, and we found that conversations with people with schizophrenia that were in unemployment condition were characterized by an increased level of mutual silence as compared to conversations with people with schizophrenia that were in unemployed condition. Regarding relationship with psychopathology, we found significant correlations with the PANSS negative scale, the PANSS general and disorganization scores, while we didn't find no correlation with the PANSS positive subscale and also all the phenomenological scales that we used against our hypothesis, because we hypothesized that especially the level of overlap and of mutual silence would have been linked to some peculiar subjective experiences. So we were a bit disappointed. Here we wrap up our results, graphically representing the interactions. So here the interviewer has this blue sweater, and she talks first with an healthy control that wears an orange sweater, and then with the person with schizophrenia that wears a fuchsia sweater. And then in the speech bubbles, we graphically represented the content-free speech activity records that I presented before. And we wrapped up here our results. So in conversations with people with schizophrenia regarding the interviewer, they have to produce an increased amount of speech, shorter speaking turns, and shorter silent turns, while the patient produced a reduced amount of speech, again shorter speaking turns but longer silent turns. And at the level of the interaction between the two, we have more overlap, more mutual silence, and more tone. So an increased fragmentation of the communication that could be interpreted very cautiously as a dialogical expression of a certain level of disruption of this interactional coordination between the two interactants. So regarding this first study, the strands were first an objective quantification of turn taking with a focus on the dyadic interaction. We also obtained good quality recordings, and we performed a thorough psychopathological evaluation of our patients. But we had limitations of the small sample size, the cross-sectional design. We just investigated one type of interaction, that is the doctor-patient interaction, that is a very peculiar kind of dialogue. We just focus on dyadic interactions and not multi-party ones, just dialogical interaction and not multimodal. So we didn't have video recorded interactions to perform multimodal analysis. We just have Italian speaking subjects and just individuals with and without schizophrenia, but no other clinical conditions. So the same recordings were also analyzed regarding prosodic and voice quality cues, and this is a preprint, and we are working on the paper that we hope to submit soon. So regarding the extraction of the acoustic features, we performed it with the PRAT, and in particular with the prosogram tool and a modified version of the prosogram tool to automatically extract also voice quality cues that traditionally are not extracted from prosogram. And we did this specific analysis with the help of a linguist in Paris, that is Jalal Al-Tamimi. And we were able to extract more than 70 features pertaining to some domains like temporal profile, fundamental frequency range, fundamental frequency variability, and voice quality cues. So regarding the results, again, we compared the two groups, finding differences in the two groups regarding the temporal profile, with people with schizophrenia producing a reduced speech rate, a reduced syllabic nuclei number and duration, a reduced proportion of phonation, an increased pause duration, and an increased proportion of pausing. Against our hypothesis, we did not find any differences in fundamental frequency range, but we find some differences in fundamental frequency variability with an increased proportion of gliss and intrasyllabic trajectory that could be an expression of an increased variability of the intonation, which was also surprising for us, but also a very huge variability within the schizophrenia group regarding the acoustic cues that we extracted. And then finally, regarding voice quality, we found some differences that could be an expression of an increased perception of a breathy phonation in our patients. Regarding the association with psychopathology, this time we wanted to change a little bit the graphical representation of it, so we used the Sankey diagram. At the left of the plot, we have all the acoustic domains that we extracted. And then at the right, we have all the psychopathological clinical domains that we investigated with our scales. And then we represented, so each connection represents one or more significant correlation after correction among the different domains. And so we found many significant associations between the acoustic and the psychopathological profile. And we were particularly interested in the fact that we found many significant correlations between the temporal profile and the ease. The ease is the scale that really investigates these peculiar experiences of the patients that would be an expression of this perturbation of this very core part of the self. And these are considered really as core phenomena in schizophrenia, like, for example, perturbation in the stream of consciousness and cognition that I've mentioned before. We found some correlations also with the classical clinical tools to investigate communication in psychosis, so the TLC and especially the Klang that focuses more on language. And then we found some correlation with the ARS. The ARS is a phenomenological scales that explores the subjective experience that patients have of the intersubjective encounters. So, for example, the hypo attunement, the feeling of intuitively understanding social situations, for example. So we found it interesting to find these significant correlations. So regarding this second study, this is the first study, the best of our knowledge, comparing people with schizophrenia and controls regarding acoustic profile in Italian-speaking individuals. We used the long recordings of about 15-20 minutes, so longer than the most of the other acoustic studies performed. We used a good experimental setup and a free speech task. We extracted an extensive set of features, and we also performed fine-grade psychopathological evaluations. And it is also, at the best of our knowledge, the first study exploring the link between acoustics and subjective experiences. The limitations are basically the same that I mentioned for the other study. So to overcome some of these limitations, another part of my PhD was to try to investigate prosody, voice quality, and turn-taking in French-speaking individuals in a transdiagnostic sample. So we integrated these analyses within a study that is the Demeter study, and we published last year the protocol paper, if you're interested in it. The study is currently ongoing. We are recruiting at the Early Intervention Center of Paris individuals from different groups, and I'm doing this study with the collaboration of Dr. Anthony Ftimovici. So we are recruiting healthy controls, ultra-high-risk individuals, individuals with the first episode of psychosis, with schizophrenia, and with ASD. It's a small study, more a proof of concept, so we will recruit at the end 21 individuals from each group. And individuals really undergo a thorough evaluation from the neuropsychological point of view, psychopathological point of view. They undergo genetic and epigenetic testing. They undergo EEG and also recording of the interaction interaction to extract again prosody and turn-taking cues. So regarding our perspectives, with the corpus, with the corpora that we are collecting, so from the Italian and from the French sample, we would like also to, at some point, investigate differences in prosody and turn-taking management at different stages of the dialogues, so not taking the dialogues as a whole. We would like at some point to test for cross-linguistic and diagnostic specificity of these cues. We would like to have at some point transcriptions and to add some content analysis, especially regarding turn-taking. It would be very important also to combine the content-free speech activity records with an evaluation of the content. And also investigate the relationship with other important features in schizophrenia and in psychosis in general, like the motor signs. More an outlook for future perspectives would be to test prosody and turn-taking in more ecologically valid setting. To test our techniques already with our corpora, for example, open smile or whisper. At some point, we would also like to study turn-taking in a more multimodal way, adding, for example, motion capture to study movement or eye tracking to study gaze behavior and combining all this information. To use more constrained tasks, for example, map tasks or games, collaborative games, and to study also multi-party communications with more than 2 interactants. These are all the people I would like to thank that took part in the study from Italy, Germany, and France. And I would like to thank you for your attention. And I hope I was in time. Okay.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Valeria, for this great presentation. I think you can take notes, the questions you want to ask to Valeria. After Sylvia's presentation, we'll pass the discussion part already. I think right now we can start with Sylvia.
Yes. Can you see my screen correctly?
Yes, Sylvia.
Yes, okay. Okay, good afternoon or morning, everyone, and thank you for having me today. I will discuss some ongoing analysis on positive formal thought disorder in schizophrenia, focusing on how we can quantify the symptoms using a sentence transformer model. Disorganized thinking or speech is one of the most common symptoms within the spectrum of schizophrenia disorders, affecting more than half of the patients. In the literature, the terms disorganized speech, disorganized thinking, and positive formal thought disorder are often used almost interchangeably. So I will also use these terms as synonyms throughout this presentation. And these terms are used to describe alterations in the processes that regulate the organization, the directionality, and the formulation of thoughts, leading to unusual or disorganized pattern of speech. According to the DSM, disorganized speech is a key diagnostic criterion for schizophrenia and is considered an important early warning sign. Andreasen distinguished between 2 types of formal thought disorder, the negative FTD, characterized by poverty or slowing of speech and thinking, and the positive FTD, which includes atypical or disorganized forms of thought and language. And this factor structure was also identified in the TALD scale, the scale for thought and language disorder, which we use to assess FTD in our study. And for today's analysis, we focus specifically on positive FTD. I'll give you 2 examples of how positive FTD can manifest in speech. One is derailment, and in derailment, thoughts gradually drift away from the initial topic and never return to the main theme. While each individual utterance might be correct or have a meaning on its own, the connections between utterances are unrelated to the broader discourse context, making it difficult to follow. Another common phenomenon is circumstantiality, where too many extra details make it hard to focus on the main point. So the message gets lost in unnecessary information, but unlike derailment, the speaker eventually gets back to the original topic. So how can we leverage NLP techniques to recognize these and other aspects of disorganization in spontaneous speech? We know that NLP methods can be used to quantify semantic associations between words. And to do so, words are embedded in a continuous vector space, but the exact representation depends on the methods used. We have static embeddings, which capture the general meaning of a word across multiple contexts. And then we have contextual embeddings, which are generated using deep neural networks and dynamically adjust word representations based on the surrounding context. This allows them to capture the context-specific meaning of a word, making them particularly effective for handling words with multiple meanings. So while static embeddings are useful for analyzing isolated words, such as in verbal fluency tasks, continuous spoken language relies on evolving and context-dependent meanings. So contextual embeddings are therefore better suited for capturing how meaning dynamically changes over time in spontaneous speech. Once word embeddings are created, we can derive sentence embeddings using various techniques and measure how similar or distant the sentences are in meaning by calculating their cosine similarity. Metrics of first-order and second-order similarity can be derived to measure how meaning evolves across multiple utterances. And first-order similarity measures the semantic similarity between consecutive sentences, allowing to identify anomalies in short-range discourse organization. Whereas second-order similarity measures similarity between non-consecutive sentences, identifying semantic anomalies that emerge over a longer time span in discourse. So by analyzing both, we aim to gain a more comprehensive understanding of how meaning is maintained throughout discourse in people with schizophrenia. So the aim of our analysis was to test the association between consecutive and non-consecutive sentence similarity and positive FTD in individuals with schizophrenia over 2 time points. We hypothesized both similarity measures to be associated with positive FTD, reflecting different types of semantic anomalies in discourse. And more specifically, we expected that consecutive sentence similarity would capture local semantic anomalies, such as cases where adjacent sentences are not related to each other, a phenomenon referred to in the TALD scale as dissociation of thinking or incoherence. We instead expected non-consecutive sentence similarity to reflect more global semantic anomalies, including repetitive or circumstantial thinking, which emerge across longer discourse segments. This table summarizes the characteristics of the participant in our study at 2 time points. We had 54 participants for baseline and 41 at follow-up after 3 months. 70% of the participants were male, with an average age of around 40 years and a medium level of education. The positive TALD in bold is our reference scale for positive FTD, and these values indicate mild symptomatology with no difference in symptom severity between the 2 time points. Regarding diagnosis, approximately 25% of patients have schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, while 75% have schizophrenia. This is our methodological pipeline. I would like to highlight the speech elicitation method adopted, a semi-structured interview lasting approximately 20-40 minutes with neutral questions recorded following a standardized procedure. The quality of all audio files was checked manually, and the length of the recordings was subsequently standardized to 4 minutes for all participants to ensure greater comparability, considering that some individuals tend to speak more than others. And the participant audio data were isolated from the interviewer's one and automatically converted into text. As per processing steps, we just removed field pauses because in vector-based representations, their embeddings do not carry content related to the overall discourse topic. Each transcript was analyzed using a monolingual sentence BERT transformer model for Dutch language, which was employed to represent sentences as vectors and calculate cosine similarity. As a clinical tool for assessing positive FTD, we use the TALD positive scale, which includes 17 items. which aggregated output a total positive score. And as for semantic similarity, as anticipated before, we looked at the mean semantic similarity between consecutive and non-consecutive sentences. I will show you an example. So for first order similarity, we compute the cosine similarity between sentence 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 3 and 4, and so on. While for second order similarity, we compute the cosine between sentence vectors that are one step apart. So sentence 1 and 3, 2 and 4, 3 and 5, and so on. And finally, we average the cosine similarity scores across all sentence pairs to obtain one value for each type of similarity per participant. We use the linear mix effect model to analyze the data collected at baseline and follow-up. The goal was to predict the the positive TALT scale using first and second order semantic similarity measures. And we included the 5 covariates, 3 of which were demographic factors, namely sex, age, and education. Then we adjusted for the total number of words, which has been shown to possibly affect semantic similarity values, and the time. We also included an interaction term with time to assess if the relationship between semantic similarity and TALT positive changes over time. We began with a full model that included all predictors, and using nested model comparisons, we assessed the contribution of each predictor one at a time. If removing a predictor did not significantly affect model fit, then it was excluded. So our results show that second order semantic similarity, so semantic similarity between non-consecutive sentences, shows a positive association with the severity of positive FTD, independently of the covariates considered and at both time points, since no interaction with time was found. So the higher the semantic similarity between non-consecutive sentences, the more disorganized the thinking. And this suggests that the stronger the semantic influence of earlier sentences on non-consecutive later sentences, the more speech is perceived as disorganized by humans. We repeated the same analysis, but this time predicting single items of the positive FTD scale using second-order similarity. And the results indicate that greater semantic similarity between non-consecutive sentences reflects repetitive, circumstantial thinking characterized by the inclusion of excessive details, interferences, reiterations of concepts, and difficulty introducing new thematic elements, a speech with reduced informational value. Then we conducted a correlational analysis for repeated measures to directly assess the extent to which measures of semantic similarity converge with the TALT scale over time. In the graph on the left, we observe a positive but non-significant correlations between first-order similarity between consecutive sentences and the TALT. On the right, we see a stronger and significant correlation between second-order similarity and the TALT. So this supports the findings I presented earlier, suggesting that metrics assessing more distant semantic relations in discourse, rather than focusing only on consecutive sentences, may provide a more sensitive measure of disorganization. These plots show the same correlational analysis, this time adjusted for total word count, and the effect size of these correlations is slightly reduced. The slight drop in effect size suggests that word count explains a small portion of shared variance, but it doesn't drive the effect. A correlation coefficient of 0.35 between second-order similarity and TALT suggests that this measure has moderate convergent validity. It is not strong enough to indicate a complete overlap with clinical assessment, which was also not expected given the difference in the nature between these measures. Consider that clinical assessment with the TALT are based on ordinal scales applied to a 50-minute conversation, whereas computational measures are derived on 4 minutes of speech on neutral topics and are purely text-based. We repeated the correlation analysis, this time assessing the relationship between each individual item of the thought positive scale and second-order semantic similarity to better understand which dimensions of thought disorder we're capturing. And we only observed one significant correlation across time, and it was with circumstantiality. So these findings suggest that the more circumstantial thinking is, the higher the semantic similarity between non-consecutive sentences. So excessive details characteristic of circumstantial thinking are less visible in consecutive sentences, where some level of semantic similarity is naturally expected. However, when the third sentence remains strongly semantically linked to the first, then the thinking is perceived as increasingly circumstantial by human evaluators. So what have we observed up till now? So first, that semantic similarity between non-consecutive sentences predicts positive thought disorder over time. And this relationship remains robust after controlling for demographic factors, total word count, and interaction with time. While still experimental, this metric could be further validated and holds potential for monitoring dimensions of positive FTD. Then the type of language alterations can be itself an indicator for the severity of the disorder. In our sample, which on average exhibits mild thought disorder, the correlation between second-order similarity and circumstantiality suggests that this linguistic feature may be a marker of mild thought disorder. Third, our findings support the shrinking semantic space hypothesis, according to which disorganized thinking is linked to a contraction of semantic space in schizophrenia, meaning sentences are sampled from a smaller semantic space, leading to higher similarity. And this contradicts traditional theories, which suggest that disorganized speech results from lower semantic similarity between words and sentences. Finally, second-order semantic similarity was a more robust metric for positive FTD than first-order similarity. And previous research found that second-order similarity between words was more robust than first-order indeed, but for distinguishing patients from controls across 3 different languages. However, when correlating with positive FTD, no consistent association was found across languages in this other study. So there are some possible explanations for this discrepancy in findings compared to the study of Parola. So first, they used a fast text model, and they capture static embeddings, and they compute the cosine within words. So they did an analysis at the word level. So the methodology is different. Then there could be clinical heterogeneity because our participant had mild symptoms, and we don't know if this correlation would still hold with more severe levels of positive FTD. The speech elicitation task was different. Demographics was also different. Our sample was predominantly male and around 40 years old, which may have influenced the results. While in the study from Parola, the number of males and females was more balanced, and the average patient age was less than 30 years old. And then also differences in the thought disorder assessment, while we use a different clinical scale to measure thought disorder. So these findings open up new directions for future research, aiming to validate the current results in larger longitudinal samples, investigate why second-order semantic similarity shows a more robust association with positive FTD than first-order similarity. And understanding this could help clarify the linguistic and cognitive mechanisms underlying this organization and contribute to the development of more precise models to distinguish between different forms of thought disorder. Then evaluate whether second-order semantic similarity measures generalize across different stages of the illness, particularly in more severe cases of positive thought disorder. So does the increased semantic similarity between non-consecutive sentences become even more pronounced in severe cases, or does this measure lose its sensitivity at higher symptom severity? And then explore the neurocognitive mechanism underlying positive FTD and how this affects semantic similarity, and evaluate all of the above across different languages and elicitation tasks. I would like to thank you for your attention and thank my group and colleagues for their support and inspiration throughout this work, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you so much, Sylvia, for the great presentation. We can pass the discussion part. If you want, you can use your virtual hands or you can use chat box and I can read your questions. Yes, Sunny?
I had questions for both of the speakers, actually. I had multiple questions for both speakers. So maybe I'll ask one first and then I'll, take a turn after other people are asking theirs. So I'll go in chronological order. And for Valeria, I mean, both of you really thank you for your talks. That was really fantastic. For Valeria, I guess, I had two questions about maybe, not very deep ones, I suppose, but for the setup that you had with the two-channel recording with the microphones, I think that a setup like that is obviously important for being able to capture conversational data. And it's something that we've considered in my group too. But especially because we often work with relatively people who are more in their acute psychotic episodes and are currently admitted to the hospital, we didn't think that that was going to be, acceptable for our participants, and we thought that it might be difficult for the participants to do, but we didn't really test it out that extensively. So I was wondering what your experience was like in terms of that experimental setup.
Thank you, Sunny, for the for the great question. Yes, I had the same kind of worry because the story is that I did a part of my specialty training in Germany, and it was the phoneticians that said if we want to do some linguistic study, it was 2018, we have to use this experimental setup, and I was very skeptical. But in my experience, no patient had any problem with that. Again, here in Paris, we are working also with people with first episode of psychosis or more acute fears of illness, and nobody has problems with that. But I mean, this is my my very little experience. I would also say that maybe in the future we would like more to do more video recorded interactions and overcome also the use of the headset microphones because it's not very ecologically valid, as I said. But still, in my experience, it was okay for participants because I always ask at the end of the recording, and they say, no, when I talk, I really forget about it. So.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Maybe we can try that. Oh, my coordinators tell me that they have problems getting the participant to stay. Well, they don't try because they our participants tend to pace around the room often, especially the people with higher TLC types of symptoms. So anyway, and then also the other thing, my other question was just a little bit of a clarifying question, if you don't mind. I'm not very
Oh,
familiar
sorry.
with the flow type of diagram
Yeah.
that you showed. I was wondering if you could, slow it down for me a little bit because I'm not sure quite what.
No, thank you for the question because I got a lot of criticism for the co-authors of the paper we have written. It's me that I really like this plot, but it's not a plot designed for correlations. I totally agree with that. It's mainly these Sankey plots are more used for example, to study flows from longitudinally, for example, groups that are one diagnosis and then afterwards receive another kind of diagnosis. So it's more this kind of representation that the Sankey does. What I did is I did all the correlations. I corrected for multiple correlations. comparisons. And then I took all the significant correlations and I plotted each significant correlation is a little line of the plot. So one of the problem is that we don't see with this plot the direction of the correlation. Is it positive or is it negative? And the magnitude of the correlation. So for example, in the paper we are doing, we also have tables with all the correlations, all the with all the data, the direction of the correlation, the size effect, etc. I don't know if it clarifies or not a little bit the. It's really me that I like this graphical representation, and it's really to give immediately an idea of the kind of interaction that we have between acoustics and all the psychopathological dimensions that we used.
Okay, great. Thank you. No, it does help. Thank you so much. I'll put myself at the bottom of the line.
Okay. Chiara?
Okay, thanks, and congratulations on really fantastic talks, both of you. So I have a question for Sylvia, and my question, maybe you've said that, and I've missed it, and I'm sorry in case, but what kind of vectorial space did you use to extract the cosine similarity measures? And was it only one, or did you try more than one?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I should have said it. If not, I'm sorry. We use the sentence BERT model. Yeah, and for now we only tried that, but the idea is indeed to maybe compare it with other models as well, such as some GPT models or still transformers model, but other types. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that would be great to see if there are any differences in using other models. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Lena?
Thanks, Tashi. I'll keep it short given the time. Two fantastic talks. Thank you both, Sylvia and Valeria. I have a question for you, Sylvia. It's really the theoretical interpretation of your findings. The first order semantic similarity doesn't seem to correlate well with positive FTD, but the second order seems to. What does this really mean? What is the explicit theory here? I know you mentioned the semantic space shrinking. It seems not so intuitive to me that shrinking semantic space should link to second order, not first order. And what will happen if we have third order, fourth order, so on and so forth? What's your thought on that?
Yeah. I also have to say that the findings was at the beginning unexpected for me as well. And the more I started to think about it, and the more for me, it started to make sense. Because if we think about aspects, dimensions of thought disorder, such as perseveration, circumstantial thinking, logorrhea, they imply repetitions of the same overall topic, and they all have this in common in a way or in another. So if we look at a discourse analysis, we would expect that there is higher semantic similarity throughout the discourse and not lower semantic similarity, because the theme, the topics may be the same, they may be repeated in a form or in another. So this started to make more sense, that maybe actually the incoherence, so if we assume incoherence to be really a absence of relation, semantic relation between two consecutive sentences, then we should find a correlation with the first order semantic similarity, but in the opposite direction, not in the necessarily in the as a positive correlation. So I started also to think that maybe what we're capturing with semantic similarity indeed is in this case at least is a sort of thematic perseverance across discourse. In terms of theoretical, yes, yeah, I agree that if you want to apply the shrinking semantic space, then you could apply it also to the first order similarity, but to the second as well, because also I don't remember if the shrinking semantic space is only to be assumed between consecutive between words or also between sentences, and that's different because similarity between words can also indicate lexical impoverishment, for example, but at the discourse level, the similarity between sentences indicate really more maintaining the theme along the discourse. So we are at a different level of analysis. So, but it's the only type of theory that for now it has been, let's say, put forward.
Thanks. It stimulates more thinking for sure.
Yeah.
So I think we're at 10 o'clock, but I can keep this Zoom open for a few more minutes if our speakers are available and if there are still, questions.
There is a question in chat box, I think, Sunny. Maybe I can read it fastly. For Valeria, great talk. How high were your correlations between acoustic variables and PANS negative symptoms, and specifically items of the negative subscale?
So we found medium to strong correlations between acoustic features and the negative subscale of the PANS. Especially, I would have to check, but especially with the speech rate. So it was a negative correlation. So the higher negative symptoms, the lower the speech rate, and also intonation variability was negatively correlated with the negative symptom severity. But we did not look for each individual item of the PANS negative subscale. We used the score as a whole. So maybe it's something that we can add in analysis. So thank you for the question.
Sunny?
Thanks. So I wanted to circle to my questions for Sylvia. I think so. You mentioned in your methods that you standardize the length of in terms of minutes for the content that you analyzed, and it was drawn from a longer clinical interview, right? Type of situation. Did you standardize the content of the clinical interview at all as well, in any way?
No, that's a good point. No, we did not. So it was really a harsh cut. We standardized the audio files at 4 minutes because that's the minimum where all participants have at least 4 minutes. So it would allow us to keep our full sample. But yes, no, we did not do that. But that's actually something to think about indeed. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And then I was also wondering, so I just want to clarify, I think that I believe the direction of the effects that you found was that positive thought disorder was related to higher similarity, right? As I think many of us has been finding in the more recent study and as departing from earlier studies as well. Okay, great. And then and I think you said something in your presentation that I didn't quite catch, something about like the more the first sentence is perceived, the higher
Yeah.
the influence it had on the thought disorder. I was just wondering if you could clarify that.
Yeah, it's just the interpretation of the findings. So I wanted to say that the if we take like let's say from sentence 1 to 3, the more the content of sentence 1 affects or is similar to the content of sentence 3, the more disorganized the thinking is perceived. So it's just the interpretation of the higher the semantic similarity between non-consecutive sentences, the higher the thought disorder. It's said in a different wording, but it's the same.
I think time is up, but we can still continue if you are okay.
Yeah, for me, it's fine.
For me, it's okay.
There are two more questions also on the chat box. The first one is, did you see what, this is for Sylvia, by the way. Did you see what happens with higher order semantic similarities? Is there a relationship between different orders or are higher orders not relevant?
Yes, thank you, Claudio. No, I haven't tried that yet. However, I thought about it because, of course, it would allow us to capture longer segments in discourse, so a longer span. However, I'm also a bit concerned not to try out too many measures, because that's a bit the problem that we have had with this type of research. So for now, I tried with measures that were supported by literature. However, I would say that yes, it is a good idea. Another thing I was thinking about is to try to compare, for example, the sentence one or like a sentence with the sliding window to the context before, including the previous three sentences, for example. So instead of doing it like really this harsh, like between individual sentences, to really try to use sliding windows instead. And that maybe I could look also at higher order semantic measures. Yeah, I don't know if I was clear with this answer. I hope so.
Oh, it's clear, I think. Thank you so much. And the last question for Valeria. Are the scripts for obtaining the acoustic feature available in repository?
Yes. So regarding the program is an open, you can download it from the page of Piet Mertens, the person who wrote the pipeline to extract the program profile. Regarding the modified version of the program that we used for the voice quality cues that are not included in the program profile, this is for the moment not in an open repository. It is done by Jalal Al-Tamimi, who is a linguist in Paris. But if you're interested in it, you can contact him, and I think he will be happy to share it. Regarding the turn taking part, all the scripts are on a repository, and there's a link in the paper by Francesco Cangiemi that we published last year. So I don't know if the only thing that for the moment is not in an open repository is the part to extract the voice quality cues. All the rest is publicly available.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks to our
Thank
speakers.
you.
This is a great way to wrap up our seminar series. All
Thank
right.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.